John Dickerson, let me bring you in and ask you about Cruz's victory in Wisconsin. What does it mean?
Well, it's a big momentum builder for him. We still don't know how the delegates are going to get a portion, and that's important because if Cruz gets all 42, then that's a slam dunk win. That's all the delegates in the state, and that's a possibility. We'll have to see how it works out for the two of them by district. But then we're going to see this battle between Cruz and Trump to argue why it happened. Was it the idiosyncrasies of Wisconsin, or was it Donald Trump's bad last week? Was it the fact that conservatives decided finally that he's not really one of them? Whoever wins that argument, whoever defines what Wisconsin means, will be able to then fight it out over the next couple of weeks. Donald Trump has some good news, though. New York and Pennsylvania coming up are good states for him.
Now, we've had reporters all over Wisconsin today talking to voters as they left the polls, asking them why they voted the way they voted. Is there anything in the exit polls that suggests whether Trump took a hit from his terrible week last week?
Well, it depends. If you look at those who made up their mind in the last few days, he got 35% of the vote. Cruz got in the low 40s. That's not as big a margin as Cruz has in the overall vote. Given how bad the last week was for Donald Trump, you could imagine a real fall off the table. But in those who made their mind up in the last week, he didn't do very well at all. And Cruz had a much bigger margin in that group. So it's hard to figure out exactly what it might mean for him.
You have to wonder whether Wisconsin is Cruz's last best state. He's now moving into New York. There's California in June, Pennsylvania, not necessarily friendly territory.
Right. The map is good for Trump going forward. That's why everybody's going to be looking for something in these results. Both Cruz and the Stop Trump forces are looking for anything in these results that they can weaponize in future states that will give them an advantage in places where they don't have a candidate who really can take it to Trump, in New York particularly, but in Pennsylvania and the northeastern states and California. So that's why they're looking so hard for something in Washington.
Well, Major Garrett has been chasing the Trump campaign all over the country. Major, let me ask you, what is Trump's strategy going forward after this loss?
Well, to get over this as quickly as possible, focus on New York, focus on Pennsylvania, and also, Scott, begin to fill in some of the conspicuous blanks in policy and substance that have always been lurking behind Trump's big-time rhetoric and large, all-encompassing promises. And we began to see evidence of that today. When the polls first opened here in Wisconsin, boom, here comes a memorandum from the Trump campaign about how it envisions using economic leverage to force Mexico to do what is said over and over and over it won't do. Pay for a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. I won't go into all the details, but the essence of it is this: $24 billion in remittances from people living in the United States sending money back to Mexico. That happens every year. That's what the Bank of Mexico says. Trump said that money will be stopped if he's president, and he will use that threat of $24 billion of deprived revenue to Mexico to cajole the Mexican government into financing construction of a wall. There are all sorts of practical questions about the regulatory regime, whether you could do that legislatively or whether it would even work. But the most important aspect of it, Scott, is that it is detail that was never there before. And the Trump campaign promises more detail on other policy promises that Trump has made, laying them out in speeches and in similar campaign memorandum. I think that is going to be one of the most important things you're going to see as Trump adapts to this loss here in Wisconsin.
Major, thank you very much. And breaking news at this hour, CBS News is projecting that Bernie Sanders will, in fact, win the Wisconsin primary tonight. Nancy Cordes, what's it mean?
Well, Scott, voters in Wisconsin were asked what's the most important quality to you in a presidential candidate, and the number one response was someone who is honest and trustworthy, and he won those voters by a margin of 8 to 2.
Nancy Cordes, John Dickerson, thanks very much for being with us on this election night.